Okay, so this is a story of something that happened when I was about 9 or 10 years old. My dad had the impression that we needed to go to this very remote location and find something. He felt like there was something that God had for him there, for him to find. So we went. We took several trips, my brothers and I, my dad and I think it was the third trip. It was one of my brothers and my dad and I on that trip. But I had another brother who took trips with us also. But we'd hiked and hiked and hiked and looked and looked and looked. And my dad got the impression that we weren't going to go home until we found what we were looking for this time. So we stayed out about a week. And finally got to a point where he's like, okay, we need a breakthrough. He gave my brother a blessing, and my brother said during the blessing he saw men, like he opened his eyes and he saw these men walk past, and he could see them from about the knees down, and they were wearing sandals. And he saw the direction they were walking in. So when the blessing was over, he told us that, and we went to where those men were walking. My dad said, yes, this is the place. He told my brother and I to wait there, and he went. Spent the better part of a day out there, and then he came back to report to us later that day. And he said that he got there and we could see these statues from further off. But he said there's these two pillars that we could see were statues. One of them had a statue of like a cat, like a puma or a jaguar, and a couple of other animals on it. I can't remember right now what animals were carved into it. Or what he said was there. The other had a statue of a woman, and she had one hand out with like a bowl with food, and she was like feeding people, and the other hand was pulling her clothes away to expose her breast, like she was getting ready to nurse. So this woman was trying to suck her and feed, and then below her was also on that same statue, it might have been above her or below her, I can't remember. But there was a man staring off into the distance, and he was a sentinel. And between these two 30-foot tall statues, carved into the native stone, was an altar. And my dad spent the day there at that altar praying. And while he was praying, the story he related was this man came up to him, and the man looked haggard and beat. He was bleeding. He had lacerations on his forehead. He looked very, very worn, like very distraught, downtrodden, exhausted. Even though this man looked so frail, he picked my dad up kind of under his arm, my dad was kneeling, and he picked him up so he was standing, but he had his arm around him, so he picked him up underneath his arm till my dad was standing, but this man had his arm around him. And he pointed out, and my dad could see all these people right there in front of him. And he was shown these people, and the man said, "Take care of them for me." So this is what he told us that day. Later, he tells me and confides in me that that man was the Savior, that he appeared to my father as he would have appeared before his resurrection, after he came off the cross, that my father got to see the nail holes in his hands and feet, and also the cuts from the crown on his head. And that my father was given at that time, in that day, to know that his mission as a member of the house of Israel, as a member of the tribe of Ephraim, the tribe of Ephraim's job is to gather the saints. And he was shown the people that he would help gather as a walker, and that also the people that he would help gather vicariously through those he would teach. And so that was a very sacred and special experience that he had. And I wasn't going to share it, but I felt prompted that I needed to, so that his grandchildren and his family would have that story, and so that others can be uplifted by it.